89% of the experiencers had some conscious recall for their experience. It wasn't retrieved for the first time through hypnosis or through dreams. They had conscious recall of that experience. That was a surprising finding. So we asked, what did you remember? 66% had conscious recall of observing a craft at less than 1,000 feet at least one time. 59% had conscious recall of observing non-human entities immediately prior to an abduction while they were outside their home. This is very significant. They're wide awake when this happened. And we asked what were the most common ET types that they encountered. We have our little gray, the one who's about 3 to 3.5 feet tall. The taller one, who is about 4.5 to 5.5 feet tall generally. The little hybrid. The praying mantis type of being. And the reptilian. Those were the most commonly reported types. We did receive responses about a number of other types, from the blues to the see-throughs to the Nordics as well. So 75% said that they had contact with the small grays, or zetas, as we might call them. And you might be familiar with them. Small, grayish skin. Some say that it's bumpy, leathery. Some are dressed in black, tight-fitting uniforms. Others are not dressed in any kind of uniform, and some are seen wearing hoods and capes. They're generally the ones who, if they're going to abduct somebody from their home, they will be the ones that show up in your bedroom. They're the assistants to the taller zetas. They might undress you. They might dress you again, and sometimes poorly. Your clothing might be put on backwards. You might be dressed in somebody else's clothing. So this might give you an indication that something happened to support your memory of the event. They seem to be a little less intelligent than the taller zetas. They are less likely to express emotions, although I have had reports of them expressing emotions when they're surprised. For example, one man wrote that he was on the table and one was standing near him, sort of guarding him, and he kicked it, and it flew back against the wall with a very surprised look on its face. And if you remember back to my Aunt Betty Hill's experience, it was one of these short little zetas who took that tablet from her that had the alien symbols on it that she tried to take off the craft to prove that her experience was real. 82% said that they recalled having contact with the tall grays, or zetas. Their heads are a little bit smaller in proportion to their bodies than the smaller ones. They're highly intelligent, telepathic. They tend to act as personal escorts. An abduction experiencer might see the same escort throughout their lifetime. It might become familiar to them, and this will reduce their fear of what happens on the craft. They're also examiners, educators, and scientists, sometimes empathetic, and they are the communicators. Many believe that they are mostly biological beings. Then we have the praying mantis types. 54% of the respondents stated that they had had contact with the praying mantis type beings. So what you see here on the left is a sketch done by an abduction experiencer that I have been working with, and to the right is a very nice illustration by Stephen Smith, who has done a lot of work for me. does a terrific job at that. They are said to be empathetic, highly telepathic, highly intelligent. They stand generally about 5.5 to 6.5 feet tall. Some people report that their legs sort of bend sort of in M shape, almost like grasshoppers. And some abduction experiences say that they have seen them on craft with very low ceilings, but they are down in that sort of M shape with their legs making that shape so that they fit there. It's kind of, it was very perplexing to me at first when I started to hear about them being on a craft with a low ceiling when they are so tall. They might act as doctors or teachers or even tour guides on the craft. Generally, they're not wearing clothing, but some people have reported that they wear sort of navy blue jackets that might come down to their thighs. And then 46% reported contact with reptilian types. They're known as the bad boys of the neighborhood. Yet, I've received conflicting reports. Some have said that they have been very kind and empathetic. Yet others say that they're very mean to them. One person told me they raped me and my 8-year-old daughter. That's a terrible thing to happen. They're very interested in sexual contact with humans and between humans as well. And another said, it was the best sex I've ever had in my life. So are they friend or foe? Let's take a look at our visitors' behavior. Generally, people will tell me that they were in an external environment when they had their first abduction experience. For those who have a family history, this may not have happened. If your grandmother and your mother were abducted, you might be taken from your bedroom or from your home all of your life. So you may not have ever been taken from an external environment. But most people whose abduction started were taken mostly in the 60s, 70s, 80s from an external environment. They might have been driving along when what appeared to be a plane in free fall would come to them. It would stop. It might project a light into the vehicle. It might pick the vehicle up and abduct the beings inside the car. It could also happen to people who were hunting, people who were camping, fishing, that sort of thing. People were generally taken to a landed craft. They would be taken from their vehicle and walked to that landed craft. Or in the early home abduction experiences, people were taken from their homes and walked onto the craft. That changed later. In these subsequent abduction experiences, more and more people began to report that they were taken from their bedrooms. There might be 3, generally the number I've received is 3, short zetas or grays appear in the bedroom. There might also be a ball of light, and that ball of light would rapidly expand into 1 to 3 gray beings. They would be then by the bed. The abduction experiencer would feel tingling, vibration, paralysis, and then, of course, the abject terror would set in because something is happening. They're fully awake. They might try to escape. They might cry out, but they can't move because they're paralyzed. And then all of a sudden they feel lightness. They might be lying down and then, boom, suddenly they're upright and they're going very, very rapidly toward a solid surface. Impossible? I used to think it was impossible, but I've been speaking with an astrophysicist, and he has assured me that we have the math to do that, and that we have even done it on a very small scale in a laboratory. What we would have to do, or what the ETs have to do, is, let's say, hypothetically, that they vibrate at a higher frequency than we do. And all matter vibrates at a certain frequency. The wall would vibrate at a lower vibrational frequency than the human or the ET. Now, if the ET could make the wall vibrate at its frequency and make the human vibrate at its frequency, solid matter can pass through solid matter, according to the physicists that I have conferred with. And imagine how far advanced of us they are technologically. So it seems that that is probably what is happening. What about initial transport to the craft? That was a question that we asked. 86% said that they were transported through a solid surface. 68% noted a shift in their emotions from abject terror to having a feeling of familiarity and calmness when they arrived on the craft. They tend to find themselves either in a curved hallway. In part of the craft, it might be light. In the back of the craft, near the examining rooms, it might be very dimly lit. Sometimes they simply find themselves on a table and aren't aware of how they got there. Communication. We asked that question. 90% said that the ETs communicated with them telepathically. 29% said that they heard sounds such as clicking, or human voices in late-stage hybrids, also in Nordics. Most people reported undergoing medical procedures on the craft. What were their the questions regarding physiological responses? 82% said they awoke with unexplained marks on their bodies immediately after a nocturnal bedroom abduction. And some people have photographed those. They were awake when they were returned. They were able to get photographs right away. And some individuals have sent those to me. I've started a catalog of marks on people's bodies. Only 21% of the non-abduction experiences said that they have awoken with unexplained marks on their bodies, and they are different than the ones that the abduction experiences have awoken with. The non-abduction experiencers report bruises and scratches, as do some abduction experiences. Abduction experiencers also report triangular burn marks on their neck, or their upper back, or elsewhere. They have patterned puncture wounds on their bodies, scoop marks, and 52% said that they had nosebleeds immediately after they were returned from an abduction experience at least one time, probably from the insertion of an implant. 26% said that they suffered burns, hair loss, or conjunctivitis during or immediately after an abduction experience. It was 0% for non-abduction experiencers. 44% said that they suffer from migraine headaches. It was less than 1% for non-abduction experiences. 74% say that they now have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, generally due to fear. 50% said they are more sensitive to light than they were prior to their abduction experience.